Privacy in Motion explores how your personal data fuels billion-dollar systems, while examining who controls the rules of digital privacy and what it truly means to own and protect your identity.
Today, if you think about how society, corporations, governance, and governments have moved, we hand a lot of power away.
When you aggregate power and capability, there will always be, inevitably, over a long enough period of time, abuses of that power. This is why every system has to have checks and balances. Every system has to have oversight. And the reason why we tend to aggregate power is because of frustration and bureaucracy.
Do you trust your government more, or say like a big tech company like Facebook or TikTok or Google or something? Neither?
The government and big tech are almost intertwined now, which is a concern. So I don't know how to get off the plane.
At the end of the day, I'd rather have much more control of my own information than having someone else having access to all of that.
I wanted to start off by asking you, you've said a lot that freedom is a fundamental right, but in a world that's driven by convenience, do you think we've given up a lot of that freedom just to make our lives easy?
Yeah, I think we have. And there's an overwhelmingly pervasive amount of information that's collected, everything from where you're going to who you're talking to, what you're searching for. And it's not really clear who gets to see that, under what contexts they get to see that, if you're ever going to be forgotten in these types of things. And it's got so bad, like Google knows you're pregnant before your parents do. You know, in fact, somebody wrote an article about this, and they call it surveillance capitalism. So this is the kind of data privacy that is, in a global world, we have to focus a lot on, because it's being exacerbated by AI. It kind of started with search engines and the modern early web, like with Google search and these things. And then social media came, we started oversharing everything. Now with AI, it's deeply integrated into everything we think and do. This is a new world, and really you can't solve it through laws, and you can't solve it through one good company doing something. You need to solve it through protocols.
I think the government has an important role to play. What we're really missing is like additional tools to ensure like safety and security online.
So I'd much rather if the privacy was actually in the privacy layer itself of the internet, that it was safeguarded within the plumbing of the system, rather than sort of as a response to regulation that comes heavy-handedly after the fact.
Do you think that governments can be trusted with our data in the name of protection, or do you think decentralized networks would be better to handle that? Why? Which one?
I mean, the founding fathers didn't think so. That's why they wrote the Bill of Rights. It was not a positive liberties, they were negative liberties. They restricted what the government could do to us. So architects of great societies, what they do is they build in at the highest law checks and balances that protect us. The issue is that laws are cooperative equilibria. People have to work together to update and modernize them as technology changes. And so while the right to privacy in a world of horse carriages and buggies and handwritten letters, that was something that was easy to wrap your head around and understand. And also by nature of the communication, the latency was so high that everybody had an opportunity to be very deliberate in what they thought about. Now we live in a world of instantaneous communication and mass big data and all this other stuff and AI. So the Constitution's a little far from this. And so what you have to do is you have to get people together and say, okay, how do we build things where we can kind of extend the Constitution, extend the concepts of rights, and use protocols to almost be like a synthetic Bill of Rights?
Bringing Web3 communities in, getting them to think about what is the evolution of not only the network, but how they use it, is an important sort of change in how Web3 and Web2 have evolved. Education is important, and then letting individuals and the community decide how data is used or what the path and the future of the network is. Bringing the community in to evolve that sort of conversation is an important part of our growth.
Our hope is that Midnight can kind of be that connecting tissue to bring the traditional TradFi Web 2 world together with the Web 3 world, and then make it private by default. And over time, you can figure out what that means for each application.
We trust governments to guard our rights, but what happens when they become gatekeepers of our data? If regulation is supposed to protect us, why do we feel so exposed? The next stop on this journey isn't about who watches us. It's about what happens when our digital selves slip out of our control.